Welcome back. My name is Ashley, and this is a Black Sheep Christian podcast. And today I have creative entrepreneur Ender Bowen.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I was so nervous. Okay, guys, I
Don't
don't,
be nervous. Don't be nervous.
I am. So, first of all, I'm dyslexic. So, that's a challenge in itself.
Oh my gosh, that has to be honestly, I love to read and write, so I can't imagine what kind of struggle that is. Like, man, I feel for you.
So, when I see a word or something that's just
Mhm,
not within my normal vocabulary that
mhm.
I normally read, I just, it's just an anxiety. And Um, I got through the 7th grade until I was formally diagnosed. So
Yeah.
until then, what I would do during school is I would get myself out of reading in
Mhm.
order to memorize. So if I didn't, let's say the word like apple, for example, and I didn't
Yeah.
know how to say it, I would get myself out of it to have somebody else read it. And then I'll be like, okay, this is the order that these letters go, and that's
Mhm.
apple in this order. And so I would just memorize. So I just basically
So
memorized
I was
reading.
gonna say, you know how sometimes they do those, I can't think of what they're called, where they'll show you like a meme, right? And
Yeah.
it'll everything be spelled wrong, but
Yeah.
it'll be those words, like the same
Yes.
letters, and you can read it fine. Like,
Yes.
was it kind of like that? Not necessarily in how it looked, but like once you saw Apple, even if it looked weird, did it always look weird the same way to you? And could you just read it like that? Does that make sense? Almost
It
like,
it does. Now, if it was spelled wrong, then my mind will be like it
right.
it would just really. And I remember one story that my mom remembered was lemon, and I
Mhm.
was so upset because it wasn't spelled. I thought it was lemon, but I can't remember the word, and it
Mhm.
wasn't spelled right, and I was like, this is it." And my mom was like, that was the first sign that she knew that something was wrong, because she
Interesting.
was like, I was crying because I was so sure lemon was spelled the way it was, but it was
Mhm.
a completely different word. So
Oh, wow.
if the letters aren't right, then my brain is like, what is happening here?
So, like, as long as it's spelled right, you can kind of figure it out because it looks the
Right,
same
right,
consistently,
right.
but if it's spelled wrong, it looks like a completely different thing, kind
Yes.
of.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. That's the
Yeah.
first time I'll be honest with you, like, I've met dyslexic people, I've
Yeah.
met people who've struggled with that, and no one has ever described to me what it actually kind of like looks like. It's kind of like people describing color blindness or something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
It's the kind of the same color all the time, and it may not look the same as what we understand as green, for instance.
Yes.
But if you understand what that is, then you would know it's green. It's
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
it flips off the shades and stuff that you go, I don't know what that
Yeah.
is.
It's almost
That's
like,
interesting.
yeah, it's almost memorizing shapes in a particular pattern, like shape
Yeah,
pattern.
yeah,
And
that's
so
really
if
really
it's
interesting.
weird, if the pattern isn't right, then the brain is just like, I don't know what this
Yeah, yeah.
is.
The way brains work is so amazing to me.
It
Like,
is.
I think if I had applied myself better, or maybe thought in retrospect, because I took uh, uh, a bachelor of arts in music at a liberal arts school, so it wasn't like a music school.
Yeah.
It was music because I could pass those. I did do really well in them. And my first semester was not good, so I kind of had to do something that was good. But if I could go back, I took a couple psychology courses and a couple philosophy courses. If I could go back, I would probably do something more focused on those, because I found as an adult, and maybe history too, because I found as an adult, I really, most of what I do and am interested in, and how I do the different things that I do, is very much rooted in a lot of those things, plus like a little bit of religious studies and that kind of thing. So I like thinking about things like how, faith and religion, and 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 even an academic study of those kinds of things can weave into philosophy and can weave into psychology. And I think that's a lot of what I do without knowing that I do it.
Yeah.
And I suppose if I'd actually taken actual courses on those things, I'd probably be better at it. But here we are. So, a little bit of God's grace. We'll go with that, and we'll see how that helps, I think.
It's interesting that you say that, because when it comes to like philosophy, like all
Mhm.
those things, like they intersect in many
Yeah,
ways.
Yeah.
And yet they're separate in other ways. And so when,
Mhm.
'cause for me, I ended up, what was I? I was in theater, and then I enjoyed that, and I had to take an accounting class.
Ooh.
And
These are
so,
very different
I
things from
know
each other.
it was a very different thing.
Yeah.
So, as an el I can't remember why I had to take it, but obviously I had to take it. And
Mhm.
so I did well in it, and because you either like it or you don't,
Yeah.
you're good at it or you're not. And so, I ended up taking it, and had a conversation with myself, and I was like, "I like my standard of living." And so that's how I ended up switching to accounting. But
Yeah.
it's weird because now that I'm older, I got
Mhm.
burned out from it. But now that I'm older, there are skills in accounting that can be used. But
Mhm.
I'm yearning for that theater background, that degree that
Yeah.
never I just never finished,
Mm.
or that I
Yeah.
switched from.
Yeah, I hear that. And I mean, I can kind of relate because, after I got out of college, most of what I did was, um, tech support, IT type stuff, because that's what I did all through college to work,
Yeah.
and I could get jobs that way. I couldn't really get a job doing, with a Bachelor of Arts in music. It's not like anyone was going, we need someone to hear this. Tell me if this isn't a major or minor key. Yeah, pay me $50 an hour and I'm there, you know, something like that. But, I did a lot of that, and then with some kind of pit stops in very briefly, like working at Radio Shack. And very briefly, I was a bankruptcy paralegal, which which seems boring, but in a lot of ways I enjoyed, because people think about, when they think bankruptcy, first of all, they think all your money's gone. They get that from Wheel of Fortune. But when they think bankruptcy, they think like of people who have failed or whatever. And you see these people come in and they act like they think they've failed, and you wouldn't believe how many people it was just they were on the edge of, just all they had to do was lose their job, and then they didn't get paid. And it's not like they were, um, you know, spending money above their station. They were doing the best they could in the first place. And then that's where they ended up. Or in some cases, which I found really fascinating, was people who were like, a parent died and gave them like this $1 million house, right? But
Yeah.
they couldn't pay the taxes on it, and they couldn't get it sold because it was in a place that was just, it was, people weren't spending that much money. Now, where I'm from, it's a lot of nothing. So it's great if you have $1 million home, but if you can't sell that thing, and it's hard to sell that thing up there, they'd end up in bankruptcy because they couldn't pay the taxes.
Wow.
It's really, really interesting how that stuff works. And I don't know, I think that might be the first real place that I started having this understanding of compassion for people, like, where the labels don't necessarily meet the person
Mm.
you're talking to.
Mm.
So that that's weird how I'm dovetailing into that, but that's kind of how that worked. So anyway, to go back to what you were saying about theater, I totally understand, because for me, tech support and computer stuff, I can do it fine. I'm pretty good at it, but it's, especially call centers, for me, it was kind of soul sucking and boring. And as a creative, and as someone who wants to, do something more creative with my life, and for other people, that was not a good fit, but it paid the bills. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. And it's really interesting that we're having this conversation, because I'm going to segue into something, is
Yeah.
that it's really interesting how there are quite a bit of jobs and careers out there that pay the bills. Like,
Yeah.
if you do like a CPA, if you do get a CPA, you can make great money. I
Yeah.
mean, computers, I mean, depending upon what avenue, I
Well,
mean,
where are you doing what you're doing? Yeah.
right, you can make great money, but they're so
Mhm.
soul sucking
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
so many ways. So with your journey, because you do many things, you have wrote a book, you do have a YouTube called Jots,
Mhm.
music. What was your journey with that?
Oh boy. I'll try to keep this as succinct as I can. I'm terrible at keeping things. If you've read my stuff or you've seen my stuff, it's like, oh my God, this guy won't shut up. Um,
Now, I do have to say though, your voice is very nice.
oh,
Like,
thank you so much. I appreciate
so
it.
yeah, so I'm doing the 6-week challenge, and so I
Mhm.
can't really watch things. And part of the 6-week challenge is taking all these a lot of steps.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have the, put on YouTube, I have it in my pocket, and I have to say, it's a great walking voice.
Oh, thank you. I'm hoping that more people. I'm glad that you said that because I'm hoping people will hear you saying that or see you saying that and be like, "Oh, I need to check out his podcast then." Or I need to check. And when my book comes out, I'm planning to do an audiobook version of that too. And I'm not gonna like. I think I'm really nasally, and
Oh,
particularly this year,
oh,
it's the allergies been crazy. So I feel like I'm a honking goose. But I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. That actually makes my day because I've been feeling kind of like in my nose.
it's
Um, but yeah, what I for me the creative journey started out when I was four or five. I saw Van Halen's Jump on
mm,
MTV, and I saw David Lee Roth jumping around in his spandex, having a great time, and I was like, "That's what I want to do. I want to be a rock star," and that hasn't changed,
yeah.
but it's evolved in a way because growing up, that's all I wanted to do. I started playing drums when I was very, very young. Was in a sort of pop metal band when I was 16. I did that for a couple years, and I got a lot of I got into the Smashing Pumpkins because of that. But it was very early on in that sort of experience that I decided I really want to be the singer. Like that's what I always wanted to do. I really want to have more. A lot of it was to have more involvement in the music because as a drummer and at that age and what they were doing, I wasn't having a lot of input, and that wasn't on them. It was just here's the songs, play the drums to them, and there we go. It didn't really have a lot of effect on the music per se. Um, I got into bands like U2, Smashing Pumpkins, like I said, and some other ones. And um, the funny thing was, at the same time, concurrently to this, like where I grew up with church was kind of boring. Didn't see anybody smiling, and it always felt. I'm not trying to point a finger at anybody. That would be ironic, and actually, it always felt very judgy. And to me, I'm not the kind of person when you shame me or judge me or even make me feel like that, I'm going to respond very well. I'm not saying that's a right or wrong thing about me, but I think it's a thing that God knew because I was always very interested in God. And so through bands like U2, who I wouldn't really call a Christian band per se, but they do talk about Christian themes. They were talking about it in allegories and alliterations and metaphors. And I'm like, oh, this I can kind of get into because it forces you to dig a little bit. And so then I got into C.S. Lewis and Mere Christianity and the Screw Tape Letters. And all of that was kind of making things feel more logical and analytical. And for me, I'm a very logical, analytical person. If I can sort of set a foundation for something, then I can grow from that. And I think one of the most important things that C.S. Lewis said for me was something along the lines of, and I'm kind of paraphrasing and I'm probably botching it here, was kind of if that good has to exist out as a measurement outside of humanity. And if good exists outside of humanity as a measurement, like something we aspire to rather than something we've created, then there has to be something that created that. And that once I set on that, I'm like, oh, this all makes sense now. Now I can figure everything else out. And so my journey kind of went from there to I didn't know if I really wanted to be like consider myself a Christian or a believer because the way that it had been taught to me growing up was, oh, it's going to change you and it's going to make you a different person. And I'm like, I kind of like me. I mean, I was 18, 19, of course, I liked me. But it wasn't until, and I always say don't laugh, but you can laugh if you want. I'm a big pro wrestling fan, and Shawn Michaels was always my guy. And so when he, for wrestling fans out there, you're going to know this story. He pseudo retired in '98 because he got a back injury. He was a real jerk backstage, super talented, just one of my favorites to watch. But he was a real jerk backstage. He was gone for 4 years. Became a born again. Started going to church, believing in Jesus Christ, kind of through his wife. Came back, and he was the same but better. And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, now everything's starting to make real sense. And I'm like, God's definitely talking to me because he's putting all these things in front of me. In retrospect, it's so easy to see. I'm like, you put all these things in front of me to bring me closer to you. and you did it by speaking to me and understanding me, not by going do this, do that. You just got to know me. And once you did that, it all started to come together. And I think as that went along, you know, my music kept on going. I moved to Nashville to do music, had a recording contract within the first few months I was down here. It did not work out. It was a very humbling experience, but it's the humbling I needed, because up to that point, I just wanted to be a big rock star and have houses and boats. And I'm not saying I don't still want that, but I wanted to mean something. After that, I kind of didn't want to do music for a bit. I didn't know if I wanted to. I got involved in film and television, and somewhere like 2014, 2015, like I felt God kind of whispering, speaking, screaming, nudging, pushing, you know, whatever, to be like, start writing some stuff about your experience. And that's kind of where God Jots came from. And so that all kind of weaves together. That was a long version of, actually not quite as long a version as I've told it before, but of kind of like my sort of spiritual and entrepreneurial creative journey, and kind of why I think the way I do in terms of the importance of knowing someone, not just going out and, you know, being like, oh, you need to believe this or you need to believe that. It's more about knowing the person, because when you know them, you start to love them and want for them. And when you love and want for them, you're gonna want for them so much that sometimes it's even counter to your own wants. But that's where real compromise happens, because then you're coming to the table saying, what can I do for you, not just what can you do for me. And I think that's kind of the better world I'm trying to create, where like we can all win to a certain extent. But it comes from doing the work of knowing people, individuals, not groups, because oftentimes groups are, first of all, they don't act like individuals act. And second of all, there's too many assumptions about groups. You get a person alone and have a conversation with them, more often than not, I think you're going to be surprised at who they are. They're going to subvert your expectations. And I think that's a really terrifying, but also wonderful thing about life. And just like God subverted my expectations in terms of what it turns out I think it is, if that makes any sense.
It does. It does. That's beautiful. That wasn't too long. That wasn't too bad.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I should put a little disclaimer. All right, here we go. Like, maybe that's what I need to do. I'll do like a video version of just me saying this whole stuff and be disclaimer.
Look, Moses was much longer than this.
Yeah. Very true.
Maybe even David's. I don't know who's longer.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
But ironically, the book of Joel, which, you know, is my real name, the book of Joel, really short. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to make up for it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, goodness. Every journey is beautiful. And
it is. It is, actually, yes.
And it's poetic in different ways. It's almost like Proverbs and Psalms. Like they both have like a different flavor, a different rhythm to it, you know.
Yes.
Depending upon where it is or how it lays. But with your God Jots is where I want to lead next to. Where did that name really come from? Because I don't think I really, now that I think about it, I don't think I really fully understood where that name and that idea came from.
So I read, there was a book, excuse me, I think it was like 15 years ago or so. I was in a Christian bookstore and I saw this book. I think it was called God's Blogs by Lanny DeNoho. I believe that's who it is. And I opened this book up and I was like, oh, this is so cool. This is basically, this guy wrote kind of like what God would be writing if he wrote blogs. And it was so full of joy, so full of love, and really, really, really hit my sense of humor, because my sense of humor can be a little bit playful, but out there sometimes and weird. It was cool too, because it would go from these big ideas, but it would also be these small ideas. Like I watched a woman play with a soap bubble today. Like the soap bubble just blew up in the sink and she just watched it and I watched her and it was wonderful. And the joy / disappointment on her face when it popped, you know what I mean? Like that's God looking at it. And I went, man, that's so cool. I want to write stuff like that. But I didn't feel, because I was so still early on in my journey, I didn't feel like I was in a place where I could or should be writing as if I was God, and I didn't want to just like rip from that. So it was really a lot for me about writing writing something that, wasn't like these long exegeses or something like that. I tried to keep it succinct at the time. Now they're a little bit more, they're more like sermons, I guess you could say. But yeah, I think the God Jots thing came from sort of playing off that idea of God's blogs. And then it just kind of went from there.
Yeah, that's nice. It's funny because I was talking to a student today, and
Hmm.
we're kind of coordinating to for her to be on my podcast. So,
Yeah.
trying to schedule, and she watched or listened to another student that I had on, Ikira, and it's interesting because we sell ourselves way too short,
Yeah.
like constantly, because here she is, she's saying, I'm a student, I'm supposed to be an expert at something. And I don't even think that's what God knows, none of us are experts. But I
Yeah.
think the fact that you just started is all that he asked for.
Hmm. Hmm.
So for it to be named God Jots, it's short, simple, to the point, and it's just getting started in
Yeah.
in a journey. Yeah,
Yeah, very much. And I like how you put that. Like, so many, and I'm guilty of this too. So many people kind of sit and go, okay, when I need, like, when I get to this point where I can do this,
right.
and it's like, just start. You don't need all the resources. Just start something. Like, even if you
Yeah,
don't know how to say podcast, for instance, start podcasting.
yeah,
And if you enjoy it, you're gonna reach out and find the ways to make that work for you. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah,
And I think that's how it was with God Jots. Like, I love to write. I've always loved to write, and I love to read, and I love to just, I don't know, put something creative out there. So for me, it was a matter of, okay, sit down and write something and see what sparks
right.
you. And so I can tell you, a lot of times I'll get done writing those things and I'll be like, well, where did that come from? Like, if I hadn't sat down and just did this, I never would have had those thoughts. So a lot of
Yeah,
times I'm like, man, is that coming straight from God, or like, what am I doing here? Like,
yeah,
so again, about to say, like, I don't want to like imply that God's going, whispering in my ear, and write this. Okay, well, that's a good one. Yeah, I'll do that. But I don't know. Maybe we all need to just, in whatever creative endeavor we have,
right.
think less and do more.
Yeah.
And because
Yes.
it's like improv. Life is improv, right? So if you
Yes.
think about it less and do it more. I'm actually working with a wrestling organization here in Nashville, and learning as I go how to do, commentating and interviewing. And so much of that is, in wrestling is too in general, but so much of that is improv. And I love improv. It's terrifying because you don't know when the bottom's going to fall out. But,
Yes.
that really forces you to be quick on your feet. Whereas when you have a script and everything else, and that's fine, because I was in a sketch comedy troupe too, on memorizing all that and doing the parts and figuring out exactly how I'm going to do it. It's like, yeah, but what if you don't have any of that? What if it's
Yeah.
just, I need you to talk about this, this, and this, go. And okay, here we go. So sometimes I think the most beautiful things come out of the unexpected, like that.
Agreed. I think every adult should do improv once in their life.
Yes, I
I
agree.
it and improv is an adult playground,
Hmm.
and it just I think I've learned quite a bit about myself in improv
Hmm.
than just in real life situations. And I think part of it is anything goes. So
Yep.
there's no hard feelings. We're all here just playing around.
Yeah.
So
And you
you're
kind of
not
get to stand
putting
outside of
right,
yourself.
right.
Like,
There's no you're
yeah.
lifting like judgment and all those other negative words.
Mhm.
Then as you're going, you are learning. Because I remember I did this one take, and a lady was like, "It doesn't need to be perfect." And I was like, "What do you?" I just looked at her because the director lady. I was like, "What are you talking about?" Yes, it does. But then
Mhm.
at that moment, I remember the scene too, and the scene was I was a mom and my child was coming out, and
Mhm.
they came out, and I was like, "No, you're not."
Mhm.
And Lenny's like, it doesn't need to be perfect. And I was
Yeah.
just like, but at that moment, I not only learned about myself, but it was like, why did I say it like that way?
Mm.
Why did I act that way? And it was kind of like, okay, well, grew up in a conservative household. You know, my parents, these were the rules. And so I'm acting as like my
Yeah.
parents in this setting. So you
Mhm.
really improv, I think every adult should do improv
There's
because
a
you
kind of
really do.
therapy in that
Yes.
too, you know, and
Yes.
getting to explore different facets of your personality without knowing that those were there to begin with was a
Right.
lot of fun. Like, I can't, I think this had to have been quite a few years ago. I did some kind of improv where I played a bully, which was interesting because I was
Yeah.
bullied growing up. So to play a bully was like, whoa, not that I understood the bully experience, but to
Right.
have to force myself to act like one
Yes.
almost made me get it in a way without
Yes.
actually having the experience. So, it's like what they say, hurt people hurt people. So, channeling some of that and doing it was cathartic because I think in a way I needed to do something that was mean, if that makes any sense, kind of
Yeah.
play the
Yeah.
bad guy
Yeah.
without actually there being any consequences to it and without actually being a bad guy.
Yes.
It's one of the things I love about, doing wrestling too. But yeah, it forces you to maybe see the world in this completely different way that's moving, and
Yes.
you're kind of swimming in it. And I love that whole idea of the yes and the yes and when
Yeah.
something's introduced to the scene, you must accept it as existing in the scene. And what do you do with that? You can't deny it, you can't ignore it, you
Right.
can't say no, that's not what we just did. You have to go, yes, we do. And I think that also forces you in a strange way to deal with consequence, and what do you do
Yeah.
with those consequences, and how do you move with the flow of the world. Now I want to go back and do improv again.
Yeah, I do too. And you know what? Now I think about it, like she didn't say now that I think about it, as we talk through it, she didn't say, why did you not accept them being gay? It was like, it doesn't have to be perfect. And
Yeah.
I think that really hit a chord in a way
Mhm.
because I think she knew me who I was, but
Yeah.
I wanted it to be a certain way because that's what it was.
Hmm.
So I find I'll never forget her words, and that really stopped me, and I still think about it to this day. She's like, "It doesn't have to be perfect." I was like, "What?"
you know so much of life is fake it till you make it anyway, and but if you're applying yourself and you mean it, like, and always giving your 100% to that faking it,
Yeah,
I think you learn quicker. Because I'll be honest with you, so much of what I've done, like, I know how to edit film, I know how to, work cameras, I know how to do just about anything behind the scenes and in front of the camera of any kind of like film or TV production for the most part.
yeah,
Um, because I've done them, but I had no training in them. I got a BA in music from a liberal arts school. Computer stuff, didn't have training in them. I figured it out. Doing logos, doing the art I do, making these T-shirts, everything else, like all my merch, like I just make it up as I go, and but I apply myself 100% to those things. So I go,
mhm,
well, I'm going to make a T-shirt, right? And I have no idea how to do that, but I'm not going to half-ass it. I'm going
yeah,
to
yeah,
I'm going to
yeah,
100% it. And if I fail doing that, it's a lot easier to see where the failure point was because I
yes,
was giving my all to it. If I only give 50%, well, first of all, I got to figure out if that failure point was in that 50% or if it was in the other 50 I didn't do. And what was that? Like,
yeah,
what could that have been? So if you put everything into something, it's a lot easier to see why you might have failed at it,
yeah.
if you failed. And chances are, if you're figuring it out and faking it till you make it, you're going to fail for a while. So, or fail forward, as they say, I guess.
Right. But you know what? Sometimes, with failure is a negative connotation because there are things that I've done that I failed in,
Mm-hmm.
and it may have cost a lot of money, but in a way, I can say at least I tried.
Yeah, failure is a good thing. Like, honestly, failure is you chipping off another piece of the block to make David. It's
Yeah,
you can't make David. Nobody has success. This doesn't work that way. And if you do, then I don't think you were humbled enough to serve your community, or do it for the right reasons, or use the results of that for the right reasons. um I'm not one to judge really, because I haven't actually, my David's not done. I've maybe got part of an arm. There's a lot more to go. So we'll see what happens when I get there. Um,
You're further along with me. I'm struggling on the fingers.
don't start on the fingers. That's the hardest part. Start on a leg or something. It's whatever. You go on the
Start at
fingers.
the wrong spot. Start
I
at the
need a
wrong
whole
spot.
new block of stone. Yeah. Or maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe you actually figured something out. Start with the hard thing first, because then you don't want to get all of David done and be down to the fingers and be
I
like,
know.
oh, I
I
just cut
know.
this finger off. I got to start over.
I'm
Maybe do
short.
the hard thing
That's
first.
probably why I started on the fingers. I'm short.
No, you were thinking. You were thinking. Give yourself some credit.
I can't get to the
Nobody
shoulders
thought
yet.
you had a carved
I
David.
can't get to the arm and shoulders. I'm too short. Oh,
Yeah.
so with your book, God Jots,
Yeah.
when let's talk about your book.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's called God Jots,
It's a
Forgiveness and
beautiful cover.
Healing.
I like purple. So
Oh
when I
yeah,
saw the
I
purple
know.
on it,
Purple and
I'm
gold go really well
I'm
together.
biased.
Yeah, it's called Forgiveness and Healing: How to Seek, Offer, and Understand the Power of Forgiveness. Um, Honestly, this was not what I was going to do as my first God Jots book. I was going to do like some sort of an anthology of the stuff I'd already put out on blogs with some extra things, but I was kind of doing I think it was a year ago, looking over what are people actually searching to get to my site, what are people landing on, and what are they spending time on, and there were actually a couple blogs there about forgiveness, and I thought, maybe I should write a book about forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just as it always does, it wasn't meant to be 300 and something pages. It was going to be maybe 100. And then, as I usually do, it just, mushroomed and turned into what it did. But the cool thing is, it's kind of it talks about why forgiveness is important. It talks about the power of it. It does use some scripture to go into it. I don't use scripture a lot in a lot of the things that I do, because I kind of want to try and feel it, if that makes any more sense.
It does. It does.
But I really wanted to get to a place where we can talk about. I think a lot of it was influenced. I didn't talk about this a lot in the book per se. I do mention it a few times, but we're definitely at this place, it feels like, where the world is so divided. People are so angry with each other. So much of that is, what they're being told to think, and what they're being told to, how they're being told to react. And I'm not talking about one side or the other. It's mainly both sides. And people being kind of controlled by these powers that are much larger and stronger than them. And kind of going back to like what I was talking about before, getting to know individuals, I think the only way forward it's not just compassion, it's forgiveness. It's and trying to find a way to look at it in a way to say, so much of what we do is, I need you to apologize to me first, or I need to be right and you need to be wrong, and you need to come to me with open arms apologizing. And I'm like, well, what if we did it the other way around? What if we said, hey, I forgive you, and see what happens then? I kind of put that a little bit along with Jesus too, where it was like, hey, I'm going to offer you grace. I'm going to give you this. All you have to do is accept it.
Yeah.
And the offer of it came first, not the person coming up and asking forgiveness. It was the offer of forgiveness that came first. And I'm like, okay, what kind of a world does that look like if we all started with that rather than waiting for someone to come to the apology? And I don't get deep into the larger version of that. That's more community and national. I do talk about that. I really wanted to get to some place where I could say, we all struggle. We all go through things that are very difficult and hard. And so much of what people experience is really, it's one way or another, it's about a perceived survival. And it could be real survival. It could be, I got to pay my bills. I got to get food, or it could be a sort of perceived survival where you think you're going to lose everything, or you think you're about to lose your job, or whatever. Or if you lose your job, so I know how that feels like recently, what you think that's going to mean to your existence. And you've got kids, and you got a family, you got a mortgage, and everything else you got to do. How are you going to get through it? I think so much of how we behave is based on that. And I think the more we try and understand other people through those lenses, the
Mhm.
easier it is to see why they behave a certain way, and the easier it is to forgive them for behaving that way. It doesn't mean you forget it. It doesn't mean you become a doormat. It just means how can we come together in a way that's less fraught with tension and more open. And this book it talks more about individual kind of forgiveness. A
Mhm.
friend did something to you, and what do you do about it? Or maybe a stranger did something to you, and what do you do about it? Or maybe you're the stranger or the friend that did something. How do you apologize? So it talks about that power. It talks about why it's important, but it also, I think, half the book is examples of and suggestions on how you can apologize. Some simple ones and some much more elaborate ones, and how you forgive, some simple ones and some elaborate ones, and just trying to find a way that we can all kind of come together and um, strengthen our power together, and also see each other for something apart from what we've been told to think they are. Subvert
Yeah.
our own expectations. And I always say, at the end of my podcast, I always say, be honest with yourself, be truthful with others, give people the opportunity to surprise you. And even when someone's wronged you, I think that's still act. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I go with that, and kind of what the book is about.
Yeah. I think that's um my brain just went flat. It's like wah wah wah. Um
I do that all the time.
the thought is there, but
Yeah, not
in theater they teach you and also like public speaking. They'll be like think,
Mhm.
edit, speak. And so I thought, and then
Yeah,
the edit was happening and it's just like
I'm so
so
terrible.
when you said before with the reason why, because people were landing on that mostly, that was really one of the first videos that I saw, because I was just like, oh, because I was like scrolling, I was like, forgiveness, ding. It just wasn't even a thought at the time. It was just
Yeah.
like, let's just choose this one.
Mhm.
um I do agree with that. I also like how you said there's not a lot of scripture, and I think that forgiveness is quite interesting subject. Um,
Mhm.
I think out of all of the concepts, if that is a word that scripture tries to teach us, I feel, and I could be completely wrong, forgiveness is one of the keys
Mhm.
to resolve a lot of
Yeah,
problems that
yeah.
we have outside of grace and mercy.
Mhm.
Um, and when it comes to, it's interesting too, because when you get scripture in there, sometimes people shut down,
Yeah,
and
and I even do too,
conversation.
like, that's
Yeah,
part of what pushed me away is, like, when focusing too much on scripture, I think I'm not saying it's a bad thing, you gotta have a basis of some sort,
right,
but,
right,
I think sometimes if you focus too much on scripture, and I mean, I've seen this everywhere, you can make it mean anything you want depending on how
right.
good you are at that, and I suppose I've probably done some of that myself. I'm a human being, probably, um but for me, I kind of look at it like my whole basis for everything I really do when it comes to God Jots and in my, aspiring compassionist and everything. I focus on compassion because for me, it's kind of multi-tiered.
Mhm,
Uh, a lot of people say God knows you because he loves you. And I kind of am like, well, what if it's he loves you because he knows you? And
mhm,
if that's the case, shouldn't we all try and know each other? None of us can know each other like God knows us, but
mhm.
shouldn't we all try and aspire to that knowing each other like God knows us?
Yeah.
And I also kind of look at it like God is love, Jesus is compassion, the Holy Spirit is joy.
Mhm,
So if Jesus is compassion, then one of the biggest things, there are two big things he said was loving the Lord your God with your whole heart and loving your neighbor as yourself. That
mhm.
second part of that I feel is huge, because if you can really truly love your neighbor as yourself, kind of as C.S. Lewis put it, they are you, they are your arm, your leg. When they screw up, your arm screwing up. How do you treat that? And you may be mad at yourself when you screw up for a little bit, but you eventually do forgive yourself. You make excuses for yourself. You even go, well, that's not what I meant, to yourself. Why
Yeah.
don't we do that for somebody else? Um, and the other part is when he was on the cross, being nailed to the cross, and he said about the people nailing him to the cross, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And I
Yeah.
feel like, wow, that's so much of what we do. And why I was talking about survival and struggle is I don't want to give everyone a pass and say it's out of their control,
Yeah.
but there is an aspect of that is. And I think the more compassionate we are towards that and that experience and that story and that struggle, the more we learn, not just about them, but about ourselves. I learn a lot about myself, a ton, just from talking to other people. I mean, even just talking to you, I'm like, oh, I didn't really think about that. Kind of like improv. So those two things are kind of the basic two things for me: is that greatest commandment and what he said on the cross. And we can bring a million different pieces of scripture into it if we want, but
Mhm.
that's kind of where I form my basis. And I say, well, if I've got that part right, like somebody could come to me and say, you've got that wrong, so everything else you're doing is wrong. Okay, fine. But if I've got that part right, then my analytical and logical brain kind of goes from there and what to do next. And it's funny, the further and further and deeper I go and the more I build on those building blocks,
Mhm.
it's really strange how much easier it's become when someone does or says something that I go, oh gosh, that ain't right.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, whereas maybe 10 years ago I would have been like, let's figure out if this is right or not. No, that's not right. I don't, like, not in the biblical sense. I just mean that's not right that you did that, from an ethical standpoint maybe, but it's all based on those building blocks. So that's kind of what I do, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do with forgiveness. And yeah, I do bring up some scripture, but I try very hard, especially when I get into the stuff about how to do it.
Yeah.
I try and stay away from that and make it more about the experience of what you're providing to that other person. Like, a
Mhm.
lot of that, I'm trying to let it speak for itself. And in particular for me, it's a lot because, like we were talking about earlier, when people would come at me with scripture, waggy finger, and everything else, it's like, well, now
Mhm.
I'm put that down because, right or wrong, that's who I am. And I want to reach people who are probably a lot like me, who are like, I am interested. Like, I really want to know more. But every time I look in the church window, it's people being like that. It's like, I get it. We need to be reverent. It's very important. Someone sacrificed themselves, not just someone, but God sacrificed a part of himself for us. That's a big deal. But if there's no joy coming from that, then what was the point?
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes, I mean, I go to an Episcopal church and I love my church, but man, I don't see people smiling enough. And um, maybe that's partly on me. Maybe I need to be going in there being
Mhm.
Ender Bowen, being a moron half the time, and screwing up sometimes, and maybe embarrassing myself even to get people to laugh. But that's kind of how I see it. Like, there needs to be more joy in the world in general. And I think if we, as people who call ourselves Christians, can be bringing that joy and wagging our finger less.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that means ignore what we believe in terms of eternity and everything else. I'm just saying we got to start in a different place, because I think the message is getting way lost,
Yeah.
and that's on us to fix.
Yeah. Agreed.
I
Agreed.
don't know why I went down that rabbit hole, but
Hey. Hey.
swimming rabbit hole, apparently flooded rabbit hole that I'm swimming in.
We're gonna
With clear
look at these
water and enclosed places, put
under.
them together, and what do we got?
It's interesting that you talk about church, because praise and worship. Because I was a church hopper, and I
Mhm.
actually enjoyed church hopping.
I,
It's
that's
a form
interesting.
of people watching.
Hmm. Yeah, but you can see, you can get it from so many different angles if you do that. And,
You
like
can.
you say that, I kind of want to do that, but um, I always feel weird going into a church as a stranger. It's like I almost feel like maybe I need to get a little notoriety first before I walk into one, so someone go like, "Oh, hey, Andrew Bowen's here," and I'll be like, "Hey, yes, Andrew Bowen is here." I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. But I've always felt like this whenever I walk into a group of people that I don't know, and I'm the stranger, and it's a very human and normal thing where I just walk in and I'm kind of like, do I belong? and being like, when can I be myself? And it's
Yeah.
almost like I we tell our daughter this all the time. Our daughter, I don't know how she's like this, because my wife and I are both very, once we're comfortable, we're very extroverted. We're very similar in that way. But when we first start out, we're very kind of quiet and to ourselves. We have this awkward social tension that we have.
Yeah.
My daughter, none of that. She walks into a room, she goes, "This is my room now. You can all come hang out. We can start partying. It's great." And I'm like, "Where did you get that from? Like, I really admire that you're able to do that. Can I have some of that, please? Because I
Yeah.
was in the room tensed up like crazy. And I need to stop doing that, honestly. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe that's a test. Go to a church hop and see how many of these churches you can walk into and not feel weird. Okay.
Because church hopping, you learn about the congregation because
Mhm.
you're not in it, you know,
Right.
you're not
Right.
you don't have anything in it, so you can really just be a wallflower and just witness how people praise and worship,
Mhm.
greeting. I remember when I was walking in the greeter, because I with this one, I was actually invited.
Yeah.
A kid was getting baptized, and so I was invited, and, I didn't come with the family, I was just separate, you know?
Gotcha. Okay.
And so, the greeter was I could literally see his wheels turning like, "Oh my god, this is a new person. What should I do?" And I was like, "Hi."
Let me help you. Let me help you there.
Let me teach you what your job is as a greeter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi.
Mhm.
They're like, "Welcome to such and such church." So, and then, praise and worship was very interesting. Like everybody, like it was praise and worship, but the people on stage didn't look like they wanted to be there. You know, the people
Like they
in
were
the
going through the
pews
motions.
didn't look like they wanted to be there.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it was just very um it just felt like people were there just to check a box. Like, I'm
Mhm.
here, I'm checking the box that I came to church. And the more involved I felt was, and he was a associate pastor because the pastor was probably was had other engagement, but
Mhm.
he was more of what a stereotypical church going person should be, you know, because
Yeah.
he could see it. And so after the sermon, he was like, "Hey," and I mean, he was better than the greeter. He was better than the people
Yeah.
around. And so it's very interesting when you church hop, if you ever do, um,
Well, now I think I'm
how
going.
people just move within a space.
Mhm.
And so when you're talking about how you can be better, sometimes it just is that spark in order to help people, you know, to be able
Yeah.
to move
Yeah.
within the house of God.
Kinda just jump in. Just
Yeah,
jump right
be
into
just like your daughter, you know. Hey, it's a party.
I'd feel weird doing that in the church, though, just walking through like, "Hey, who does that think he is?
Just put that baby on stage. She is
He
going to
hasn't even
take
had
care of the
communion
rest.
yet. What does he think he's doing?" Yeah, I don't know.
Just put her on stage. She is gonna take care of the rest,
Yep,
and
yep.
people are just gonna follow. Because there's something about a child that's
Oh,
just
yeah.
so magical, you
Mhm,
know?
mhm.
There's
Well,
just
I
no
mean, that's why we're supposed to be
judgment.
childlike in our wonder
Yes,
and everything else, like, doesn't
yes,
mean doesn't mean be, immature. It means
right,
find the wow in the world and
yes,
bring that into every room you bring in. That's why I'm always like, be the light, be the thing that brightens up the room, and
yeah,
maybe you can, change. I always talk about, like, when I was younger and I was I'm very idealistic now, I suppose, just more realistic about my idealism. Um, I wanted to change the world, and I think when 9/11 happened, I realized it ain't gonna be that simple. It's a lot more complicated than I thought. Like,
mm,
you have this idealized teenage way of looking at, "Oh, well, all you need to do is bring these people flowers and show them how much you love them, and it'll be fine." No, not
right,
usually. So, it made me kinda think more about, well, okay, maybe that's a lot for one person to try and do. What
yeah,
can I do? And so I always talk about, like, even the word jot sounds small, right? It's
yeah,
like a little thing you put down. Everything I do is kind of designed in a sense like a song is 5 minutes long.
mm,
My My blogs are maybe more like 10 minutes long. My podcasts are more like 10. But I kind of look at it like maybe I can't change the world, maybe I can't change your day, but maybe I can change your next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's something that's a lot more like realistic for any human being to do. And if I can change your 5 minutes, I can change your next 5 minutes and your next five
Yeah.
minutes. Just do more 5 minutes of it, and maybe that next 5 minutes, like I made you smile. I do this thing. I haven't done it yet this spring because the allergies have been crazy, but I like to take a walk in my neighborhood
Yeah.
and listen to music while I'm doing it, and I like to dance. So after maybe 5 minutes, if there's a really good beat or a good song I'm listening to, like some Janet Jackson or something, like some really good, like
Ooh.
maybe that swing, my
Yeah.
body starts moving, and I call them dance walks. And so people will be driving by in the morning on to work, and they'll see me dance walking, and they'll start chuckling, and I can see them. And I'm like, I just changed that person's day. They're
Yeah.
going to be at work being a little bit more bubbly, maybe not hating it so much, maybe. And who knows how many other people's days that's going to change,
Yeah.
because they came in with at least a slightly higher, more positive, brighter feeling to the day,
Yeah.
because I made them laugh while they drive by in the car. And maybe it was a little bit embarrassing, maybe not, but um, I'm willing to embarrass myself a little bit to get a good laugh out of someone.
Oh, that's beautiful. You are a parent. Look at you.
Yes,
That
apparently.
you are a parent. That is a prerequisite as a parent that we can embarrass ourselves and feel good about it.
Yes. Yes. I have, so I look at it like this. I embarrass myself so easily. I have no choice but to try and feel good about it. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of ho hum and misery. And I don't need that in my life. Nobody needs that.
I remember I did something to my daughter and I was like, I'm going to embarrass you. And I can't remember what it was. And my daughter was like, why? And
Why
I
would you
said,
do that to me?
that's what as a parent I should do. I am comfortable within myself
Yep.
to
Mhm.
create this, to create this feeling within you.
Well, hey, we just did. My daughter just got into middle school, the cheerleading team on the middle school that she's going into, and one of the things they had to do is a oh my god, my brain's not working. I have afternoon brain. Fundraiser where it's not one of those where you go around selling stuff to raise money, like like Girl Scouts or whatever else. It's like you basically get someone to buy a day on a calendar. Let's say it's May 5th. So they buy that day, they pay you $5. If it's the 27th, they pay you $27.
Oh,
But they don't get anything out of it. And we're like, no, we hate those. So we're like, we need to make it mean something. So we were like, if we can get the first week filled, then shoot, I can't remember what we decided that was. It was something simple. If we get the second week filmed, my wife has to do karaoke to Taylor Swift song. She hates Taylor Swift, so she had to do that live, and so she did. And I hate slime, so if we fill the third week, I get slimed, and I did, and it was awful. And and the fourth one, though, I think it was for filling the whole calendar. We filled the whole calendar in a week,
wow.
and because people just love this idea, uh, we're going to our daughter is going to dress myself and my wife up, and then we're going to have to walk around in public and film it all dressed up. And I'm like, great, here we go. It's gonna be fun. So we're doing that, but yeah. So I'm totally willing to be embarrassed and have some fun with it. I think a little bit of it is I like being the center of attention, and maybe that's not
Yeah.
healthy. But I
Yeah.
mean, when you're creative, that kind of goes with the territory. I think if you're not comfortable with being the center of attention, at the
Yeah.
very,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're not going to be able to be. Um, it's hard to be creative, especially creative that's like on camera or
Yes.
whatever
Yes.
else. And I love being on camera. I don't know as I've ever really frozen up on camera before. I've had trouble sometimes figuring out what to do, like with
Yeah.
improv and
Yeah.
splinting, but I've never been like freaking out about the camera being in front of me. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, hey,
But you
hi,
know what, to bring
camera.
it back, but to bring it back,
Yeah,
when we talk about this, um, it's almost like forgiveness is another way of stepping out of your
yeah,
boundary.
mm-hmm,
And in the end, I mean, we're talking about being silly with our children,
Hmm.
even though what we're doing in the beginning we feel is not a good thing, but in the end what we do is for our children and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And with that it's going to be a memory, it's going to be growth. um, I am sure your daughter is going to be a powerful, powerful, um, I'm trying to think of the word, loudspeaker for God, you know, for her to
Oh
be
yeah.
all for her to be as open as she is, as confident as she is. I'm sure you and your partner, your wife, are going to just instill that in her, and she's just going to be a loudspeaker, and
Yeah.
nobody is all people can do is just stop and listen.
Hmm.
And in the end, with forgiveness as well, it is like this odd feeling, but in the end, it benefits not only for you, for your family, the community, however that forgiveness moves forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it really is about, you know, so much of it is not so much setting aside differences, because when you talk about compassion, at least for me, it's also about talking about them.
Yes.
But you've got to have that basis where you can move forward. So like I talk about compassion in a sense of like really doing the work of knowing someone, and then through knowing,
Yes.
loving, and so on. But I think forgiveness is, in a way, I see forgiveness as maybe one of the tools in which you
Mhm.
apply that idea of compassion. There's so many different ways you can do it. Um, I think forgiveness is one of those ways to start. I mean, shoot, you could even have, maybe nobody's transgressed against you, but you can come to them with that kind of same
Mhm.
giving open heart, where you're like, whatever's about to happen next in the in the next 15 minutes when we talk, and maybe I'm going to say something ridiculous, maybe you are, who knows, but I forgive you. Let's go from there. Like,
Yeah.
let's not worry about that. Let's have honest discussion. And that's kind of what I mean too, when you're forgiveness forward, rather than waiting for a
Yeah.
reason to. I think that makes you more open to be your real true self, because then you're not worried about what maybe someone from across the country might say something that could potentially offend me. Maybe I could say something
Mhm.
that could potentially offend them. But if we forgive each other that right at the beginning, let's just have the conversation, and let's see what that brings about. Let's see what we learn from each other, and walk away from it, maybe more enlightened people,
Yeah.
both of them. And that's kind of the world I'm trying to create. And I think forgiveness is definitely a key to it.
Agreed. I agree. Where can they find your book?
It is going to be out on July 15th. If it'll be on Amazon for sure. It's on pre-sale right now on Amazon for Kindle. But if you go to forgivenessbook.godjots.com, I will very shortly be having a page up there where you've got some pre-sale aspects and things like that. So July 15th is when it comes out, forgivenessbook.godjots.com, and podcasts and everything else, all my articles at godjots.com. And everything else I'm doing is at enterbowen.com.
All right. I
Yeah,
don't know why I had to write that down, but I just wrote
it's
it
okay.
down.
Because the moment you get off the podcast, you're going to go, what was that? I do it all the time.
You know what? I'm glad you said that because I
God,
remember I was on with
it's why
it
I'm
was a
terrible with
student.
names.
It was a student, and I was just writing down a note, and she's like, "Why are you writing it down?" And I said, "Because
Because why not?
I need to. Why not?" And she's like, "We're recording this."
That's true. Yeah, that is true. But then you have to fast forward all the way to the end and be like, no, it wasn't here. It wasn't here. It
There,
wasn't your
yes,
pause.
valid point. Valid point. I'm gonna see her tomorrow. We're gonna have lunch, and we
Mhm.
got like little journals. I don't know why I'm showing you, like as if so. We got little journals and
No,
some
it's great.
reading material.
I'm wondering, since you made this point about like I'm writing that down, and
Yeah.
I take notes and stuff too, but it never occurred to me that I should write people's names down. Like, would that offend people? Like if someone said, "Hi, my name is Matt," and I go, "Matt, okay, hold on, stay put. I need to draw a little picture of you here, a little closer. Just gotta make sure I got a face with the name. Does that look a bit like you there?
I
Okay,
don't know. I don't
good."
know. You know what? This is so improv. I was thinking, oh Matt, okay.
Yeah, there you go. And then just be like, Matt. I got it. And then you walk around the next day being like, I'm looking for Matt. I
Susie?
know I've seen
Okay,
him.
that's Susie.
There you are. I've studied all these faces and names now. I know how to match them all. I don't
You're like
even
my
need to
real.
look at the phone anymore. Or
Oh,
even better, you got to post it. Put pad of post-its. Matt. Dunk. Right on your forehead, Matt. So everyone
oh gosh. Don't
around
take it off until you leave here, Matt,
yeah,
please.
don't take it
Please
off
don't
until
take
you
that
leave.
off.
And hey, that makes your photo easier too, because you don't even have to spend the time to write the label on it. You just go, ching. There we go. We got Matt. Okay, you can take it off now.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, Steve, what's up? No, wait. Matt, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I'm gonna have a little fun with that. I need to do something. I know we got to go, but really quickly, my wife had a birthday party a year ago where she said that all these different people that didn't know each other came, and she's like, I don't want you to put a name tag on you. I want you to write how we met. And so that created conversation when people that didn't know each other bumped into each other, and they're like, that's how you met Emily. This is how I met Emily. And like, that's how they started talking. And that was really, really fun.
That's beautiful.
Try it.
That's
Like if you ever do something
beautiful.
like that where you're bringing people that don't know each other together,
Yeah.
it automatically made it less awkward for those people too. Like, where do I fit in? How do I know these people? It's like, well, don't worry about it. You're all going to be doing the same thing with this. So like anything you can come up with to make things easier for strangers to talk that's money. That's a good one.
It is. That is a good one. Oh yeah, that's a good one. I need to write that down.
Because you can't just take a picture of it. Like, I took a picture of him saying what he was saying, but I don't know what he was saying.
Oh my goodness.
So
We
weird
do
my
have to.
humor is. Oh man.
Oh my goodness. It is time. It was time for us to go because my
Yeah.
daughter is
I'm
now
sorry.
texting me. Like,
Yeah,
are
and
you on your way
I've
back? Also, we're getting low on olive oil. Dang. It's been used up quick. Emergencies.
emergent exactly. You need that olive oil stat.
Oh god. Oh gosh. I haven't laughed this much in a while.
No, that totally makes my day. Thank you. I haven't laughed that much either in quite a while. So thank you
Oh
very much as well.
goodness.
We need to do this again sometime.
We do. We
I feel
do.
like this is the first time, just for everybody. I feel like I'm the host for everybody who's listening or watching. This is the first time we've ever talked together.
We did. Yeah.
And you would think that we've been talking for a while now.
Yes.
It was a pleasure to talk with you. I had so much fun.
Same. Same. Um, any any words of wisdom before we go?
You said so much this podcast. I feel like I'm tapped out on wisdom.
It's okay. It's okay. Sometimes God be tapped out too.
God be tapped out, right? That's why he rested on the seventh day, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't technically need to. He's God.
That's my advice to you today. Don't be afraid of rest. It's not a stop. It's not a quit. It's just taking a beat. It's all good. It's like a rest in a song. Song's still going, but you can rest. So
I like that.
Yeah, there you go.
I like that.
All
right, guys. Enter Bowen.
Yes.
I appreciate you today.
I appreciate you too. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, goodness. And everybody else, see you next time.
All right.
Bye.